since the close of World War II. And George going to explain this succinctly, nicely, and he's going to link it to its anti-people's, anti-labor tendencies. That's fascism. And it has an anti-labor and anti-people's tendency. Just think about how the 1% operate. He's going to lay all that out. We will never, brothers and sisters, have a complete definition of fascism because it is in constant motion, showing a new face to fit any particular set of problems that arise to threaten the predominance of the traditionalist capitalist ruling class. But if one were forced, for the sake of clarity, to define it in a word simple enough for all to understand, that word would be, quote, reform. We can make our definition more precisely by adding the word economic. Economic reform comes very close to a working definition of fascist motive forces. Such a definition may serve to clarify things, though it leaves a great deal unexplained. Each economic reform that perpetuates ruling class hegemony has to be disguised as a positive gain for the masses of the people. Catch that, brothers and sisters. Catch that. Each economic reform, Lyndon Baines' Great Society, each economic reform that perpetuates ruling class hegemony has to be disguised as a positive gain for the upthrusting masses. Barack Obama came into office at a terrible time for the United States. They hated George Bush. He started an illegal war, killed thousands of people, and admitted that it was an illegal war. And the people are not the people, the ruling forces around the world, especially in Europe, were crying to the ruling class over here, get us a more dignified political leader that can unify everybody. And that's how Barack Obama got selected. Selected, y'all catch that, right? Not elected, selected. Such a definition makes, excuse me, I apologize. Each economic reform that perpetuates ruling class hegemony has to be disguised as a positive gain for the upthrusting masses. Disguise enters as a third stage of the emergence and development of the fascist state. The modern industrial fascist state has found it essential to disguise the opulence of its ruling class leisure existence by providing the lower classes with the mass consumer flea market of its own. Think about name Nike sneakers, Adidas sneakers, consumer flea markets, where you could go and purchase some nice organic tomatoes and feel as if you're contributing to the diminishing of climate change. You know, go get you a nice potato that was grown organically, and you did your duty for the day. You know, this is how some folks of the lower class look at the conditions in the world as a problem of charity, of pity. But George is giving you a political understanding of this thing, how it worked from the top. The modern fascist state, United States, has found it essential to disguise the richness, the opulence of its ruling class leisure existence by providing the lower classes with the mass consumer flea market of its own. The ruling class fly all over the world. They go to Caribbean, they have islands of their own. Islands. Bill Gates and all these nasty, stinking people at the top, Warren Buffett, they have islands where they fly all over the world, never make a real decision because they don't have to. They got billions of dollars. Other people do that for them. This is what George's saying, how fascism disguises itself and uses the lower class as a tool to pounce upon the lower class. It keeps our eyes closed. We're fighting one another over meager crumbs falling off the table of the enemy. This is what he's saying. It provides us with a flea market where we could go and outdress each other. Outdress each other. To allow a sizable portion of the, quote, new state to participate in this flea market, the ruling class has established currency controls and minimum wage laws that mask the true nature of modern fascism. Reform, the closed economy, is only a new way for capitalism to protect and develop fascism. After the German SS agents or Italian, the German SS agents, brothers and sisters, was a part of the Nazi regime, or Italian black shirts, they were a part of Mussolini's fascist shock troops, kicked in the doors and herded Jews and communist partisans to death camps. After Peg Leg's White-Black Legion terror, the guardians of the Republic and their offspring legitimized the FBI. In other words, after the fascists have succeeded in crushing the vanguard elements and the threat they pose is removed, the ruling class goes on about the business of making profits as usual. The significance of the new fascist arrangement lies in the fact that this business as usual is accompanied by concessions to the degenerate segments of the working class, with the aim of creating a buffer zone between the ruling class and the still potentially revolutionary segments of the lower classes. Corporative ideals have reached their logical conclusion in the United States. The new corporate state has fought its way through crisis after crisis, established its ruling elites in every important institution, formed its partnership with labor through its elites, erected the most massive network of protected agencies replete with spies, technical and animal, to be found in any police state in the world. Catch that. I'm gonna read that one more time. The corporative ideals have reached their logical conclusion in the United States. The new corporate state has fought its way through crisis after crisis. Think about that. Established its ruling elites in every important institution, the Supreme Court, overturning Roe. Think about that. Formed its partnership with labor. Think about how they buy off the top labor elites so they don't get too militant and get the workers in the street. They brought these cats off. They formed partnerships with them. They formed partnerships with labor through its elites, erected the most massive network of protective agencies replete with spies, technical and animal. Think about Homeland Security, the Patriot Act. Think about the 16 intelligence agencies connected to Homeland Security. Think about the FBI, CIA. Think about the local police force. Think about the undercover police. Think about the Secret Service. Think about the marshals. The United States have 1 million pigs in all different levels of its state because it know it is stealing and robbing from the people. Who in their right goddamn mind will erect 1 million pigs to protect it from his own people, from a people that they come from, unless they have set themselves up as thieves, as butcherers, as murderers, as exploiters. Then they need someone to protect them. And that's why they got the army and the police force, not to look for grandma TV when ill-formed young brother breaking in, steal a TV. Police don't give a goddamn about that TV. They care about you messing up Walmart, or they care about you messing up these big banks. That's their main concern. They'll throw you in prison for that. It's a police state we live under. The violence of the ruling class of this country in the long process of its trend toward authoritarianism and its last and highest state, fascism, cannot be rivaled in its excesses by any other nation on earth today or in history. With each advancement in the authoritarian process and strengthening of the ruler class's control over the system, there was a corresponding weakening of the workers' and people's movement. We just got finished talking about that. Think about that. We just got finished talking about how they will use the workers' movement to weaken and diminish the upsurge of the people's struggle. And that's what they did with the Black Panther Party. That's why they pushed forward the Crip and the blood. That's what the comrade marked here. The enemy operate in that way, brothers and sisters. Think about that. With each advancement in the authoritarian process and strengthening of the ruling class's control over the system, there was a corresponding weakening of the people's and workers' movement. And intellectuals still argue whether America is a fascist country. Think about that. This concern is typical of the American left's flight from reality, from any truly extreme position. This is actually a manifestation of the authoritarian process seeping into its own psyche. At this stage, brothers and sisters, how can anyone question the existence of a fascist arrangement, a fascist government that we live under? Just consider the awesome centralization of power and the proven fact that the largest part of the gross national product is in the hands of a minute portion of the population. United States, brothers and sisters, owe $30 trillion. It's ruling class. $30 trillion to other leaders around the world, other banks, other debtor nations, other countries. $30 trillion. That is in the hands of the ruling class. You and I, we're not responsible for paying that. They extract our labor power in order to pay that to companies around the world. That's what we live. We're living on an investor economy. This government is an investor government. Karl Marx called it an executive committee. And what is an executive committee in monopoly capitalism but a place where those greedy, nasty bloodsuckers can meet and argue and devise plans on how to push the workers deeper into the quagmire of poverty while they can push out of us more wealth and labor. That's what they do when they meet together. Of course, comrades, the revolution has failed. Fascism has temporarily succeeded under the guise of reform. The only way we could destroy you is to refuse to compromise with the enemy state and its ruling class. The only way we can destroy this nasty Babylonian society is we, from the get-go, delineate in the sand, we are not compromising until this enemy is destroyed. That's the only way we can win. That's the only way this world can be saved from the jaws of the vampire. That's the only way it can be saved. If we make a clear delineation in the sand, the workers, the oppressed nations around the world are not going to tolerate capitalism any longer, and we're going to go over to armed struggle. Compromises were made in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and now we're into the 2000s. Compromises are still being made with our enemy. The old vanguard parties made gross strategic and tactical errors. At the existential moment, the last revelation about oneself, not many members of the old vanguard chose to risk their whole futures, their lives, in order to alter the conditions that Huey P. Newton described as destructive of life. Huh. At the greatest moment when the United States was in crisis, the 30s, 40s, and 50s, I'm not going to lay out the crisis in all those particular decades, but we'll come to it as we go through these studies. But each decade, the communists, the socialists, the Black nationalists, they refuse to give it their all. They refuse to go all the way. And as a result, capitalism was able to reform itself. They opened up the military in the 40s, allowed some Blacks in. They gave us a civil rights bill. They gave us a voter rights bill. Those are reforms, comrade. Comrade, those are reforms in the stages of capitalist development. And they're used particularly to offset and weaken and diffuse the potential of revolutionary upsurge on the part of poor, oppressed people. That's what they use this stuff for, reforms. This is what George is saying. He said, not many members of the revolution chose to risk their whole lives, their futures, in order to alter the conditions that Huey P. Newton called destructive of life. Reformism was allowed. The most degenerate elements of the working class were the first to succumb. Think about that. The more degenerate elements of the working class were the first to succumb. Think about the labor unions, the American Federation of Labor, the Congress of Industrial Organizations in the 30s and 40s, how they had these policies of not allowing Blacks to work alongside other workers. Think about that. That's what George's saying here. The more degenerate elements of society were the first to buy into the bourgeois nonsense of the oppressors. That's why you get the Ku Klux Klan. Or that's why you get fools out there today saying that a woman should not have the right by herself to determine whether to have a baby or not. Those are the degenerate elements of society. They wear suits. They work at big corporate suites. That doesn't mean they're not degenerate. The Patriot Front. These degenerate elements of the working class going around the country scaring little demonstrations in little towns around the country. Little punks. They tried it in Philadelphia, jumped out of that U-Haul. Brothers and sisters was waiting there with bats and golf clubs and knocked them upside the head. They called for the police, the Patriot Front. That same group they arrested and gave them national attention. Go look, Google it. They jumped out of their little nice van in Philadelphia. The only thing they didn't account for, they were going into an urban area. And the moment they jumped out, the brothers and sisters and the demonstrations jumped on them, whooped them bad. The pigs had to come and drag them away. Degenerate elements. Even within the oppressed Black and brown burials, we have degenerate elements. And I don't have to give you an example. You know the examples already. The vanguard parties supported the capitalistic war adventure in World War II. Then they helped to promote the mass consumers market that followed the close of the war. The flea market that muted the workers' more genuine demands. Today, comrades, brothers and sisters, we are faced with a clearly different set of class antagonisms. The complexities of a particularly refined fascist economic arrangement, where the controlling elites have co-opted large portions of the lowly working class. Controlling elites have co-opted large portions of the working class. When we ask ourselves, Where will we begin? Where should we begin when we attack the enemy state? We have to ask ourselves, and we are answered, as George said, at the productive point. The next logical question is, with whom and what will we attack the fortified interests of the productive and distributive system in a nation of short-sighted, contented, conservative workers? Obviously, brothers and sisters, the fascist movement is counter-revolution at its very center. Fascist reformism is a calculated response to the classic scientific socialist approach to revolution through positive mobilization of the working classes. Just look at what just happened in Sri Lanka. The whole country collapsed. The whole economy overnight. Millions of people in the street lost their jobs, schools closed, hospitals closed, food stations closed, all because they were connected to an economic international system that is exploitative in its arrangement. The World Bank, International Monetary Fund, they couldn't pay. And you want to see what a government looked like when it collapsed? Not because the people forced it to collapse, but because of external imperialism. Go look at Sri Lanka right now. Millions of people in the street forcing their government out of power. Millions of people. From its inception, the fascist arrangement has attempted to create the illusion of a mass society in which the traditional capitalist ruling class will continue to play its leading role. A mass society that is not a mass society of authoritarians whose short-term material interests are perfectly suited to the development of the perfect totalitarian state and centralized economy. The most precise definitions of fascism, brothers and sisters, involve the concept of scientific capitalism or controlled capitalism, a sophisticated totalitarian learned response to the challenge of egalitarian scientific socialism. Think about that. The enemy will always come up with ways of trying to deceive the people into thinking that their system, through its reform process, is a lot nice. It's a lot more clean. It's a lot more people-oriented. They will always try to convince you that way. That's why they tell you there's no class system in the United States. They tell you that all day. The politicians, the leaders at the top of the corporate state, oh, we don't have a class structure here in the United States. That sounds like Leninism or totalitarianism. We have a democracy here. This is what they say. And some of us go for it because we don't understand what is the opposite of scientific capitalism. It's scientific socialism. That's the opposite. And they don't want us to be socialists. Socialist only means you and I control the resources under the ground and the resources above the ground. The people. That's all socialism means. And the enemy hates that. After its successful establishment, fascism in Spain, Portugal, Greece, South Africa, and the United States of America, we are faced with the obvious question of, quote, how to raise a new consciousness. And I'm going to read this next paragraph, brothers and sisters, and then open it up to some questions from our brothers and sisters who are listening today. We are faced with the task of raising a positive mobilization, a revolutionary consciousness in a mass that has gone through a contra-positive authoritarian process. The new vanguard elements, the revolutionary organizations, seem to agree that withdrawal from the enemy state and its social, political, and economic life is the first step toward its destruction. The new revolutionary elements seem to agree that the new revolutionary consciousness will develop in the struggle of withdrawal, building base areas of social, cultural, and political power apart from the enemy state. When George talking about withdrawal, he said withdraw from the social, political, and economic life of the present enemy state. When we build our Serve the People programs, that's a form of withdrawal because we're not depending on them to provide us with food, clothing, and shelter, with medical care. We're building that stuff in conjunction, in unity, in lockstep with the masses of the people. That's a different kind of socialism, a different kind of consciousness. And the enemy don't want that. However, after this point, agreement grows vague and is all but lost in the sea of contradiction. After we agree, brothers and sisters and comrades, that the prerequisites is we're going to withdraw from this enemy system and build our own revolutionary institutions. That's the prerequisite. Now, after we have established that, then what? George is saying the situation then and now have grown vague and is all but lost in the sea of contradiction. The contention in our movement, I'm talking about brothers and sisters across the board, the revolutionary movement, Marxist-Leninists, Maoists, everybody that is on the anti-political left. Anti-right. Everybody that's on the anti-right is considered a part of the political spectrum. So George is saying here, this is where the disagreement falls apart at. The contention turns on one primary question: the scope and range of violence within the revolutionary process. After the lengthy and clearly unnecessary ideological battle that laid to rest a direct approach to revolution by the white or black worker, we are now faced with an equally unnecessary ideological battle over which of the various revolutionary communal approaches has the strongest revolutionary validity. The problem is this: it is compounded by the almost apolitical or apolitical withdrawing of the growing Weatherman faction and their estranged allies on campus to organic food gardens and a life of sex, music, and drugs. So, brothers and sisters, I'm going to leave this here, and I don't want to go into the next paragraph, but I want you brothers to chime in. I want you sisters to chime in and talk about how you see fascism. My only condition would be that we look at it, as George said, it has an anti-people, anti-labor, anti-oppressed people tendency. That's very important. So I'm going to open the floor up, Chairman Jake. I'm going to turn it over to you for 10 minutes of conversation amongst the comrades, and we'll resume our studies afterwards. All power to the people, brothers and sisters.
So I just want to briefly say something, but then we're going to go Rob and then Alan, because they had their hands up in that order. So what George Jackson is saying here about how the movement in his time, and certainly today as well, failed in their attempts to build socialism, and then balked when the material conditions were analyzed by Huey Newton, and Huey Newton determined what mode of action we should take as to our own liberation. That balking kind of characterized a a retrograde in the movement, because what we know is that when you read all these books in this theory, you don't actually really learn anything until you begin to put it into practice. And when these people were confronted with this new theory, revolutionary intercommunalism, a new analysis of the material conditions in the empire and abroad, and then they fail to act on that analysis, they fail to actually understand the current theory. They fail to advance the practices that were put forward. And in this way, for decades, the movement has been in a retrograde. And this is why we have not been able to make any material progress toward establishing socialism up until today. Now, of course, there are movements on the ground that are looking at this analysis. Some of them are even updating it because, as George Jackson said here, the class antagonisms have changed, and they have changed since George Jackson has written this, not entirely, but to some extent they have. And so some of this is being updated, and some movements on the ground are putting this stuff into practice and are advancing the movement. But when taken as a counterweight to the rest of the movement and its position right now, we're not really making much of an advance. In fact, we're still at a retrograde. So it's up to us to build these areas of social, cultural, and political power for our own liberation, so that we can act as a counterweight to that retrograde. We have to be able to advance the movement. We have to be able to begin building socialism. This is important. But the act of building these things, that's not the revolution in and of itself. That comes later at a higher stage, once we've actually have developed a significant amount of infrastructure. Once the antagonism between the working class and the capitalist class heightens into an open conflict, that is the revolution. So I want you to, just from what I said, I want you to remember that building these things are not the revolution in and of themselves. That comes as a result of building these things. So just try not to get that mixed up, because a lot of people will take a more utopian position and think that we could just, go out into the world and begin building socialism without struggle, or that itself is the revolution. That's the wrong idea. So I just wanted to clarify that here. All right, Rob, you can go first.
All power. I just, I like to add nuance into these discussions. So I would definitely like to hear some analysis back about what I'm about to say. So yeah, since I truck drive, I like to listen to a lot of the YouTube stuff. And it just so happened yesterday, I was listening to Huey's interview when he was in jail, the one in 1968 and the one in 1970. And he actually speaks on this subject, gives a little bit of analysis on this subject. And then the subject I'm speaking of is the reformism, or the bourgeois electoral system. So when he was asked the question, about the electoral system, his first response, one of the first responses he gave it was about after the Emancipation Proclamation, that there was a sense of pushing, a sense of electoralism for reformism that would benefit Black people. And what he said was that, how this didn't really do anything because there wasn't the political power and this electoral system for the people. And he goes on to later explain that there's, you can elect people into these offices, but if there's the people don't have any type of power, there's no political consequence if the things don't get done. Right? Things don't happen behind, if I put in, if I elect whoever in and they don't do it, then what? Nothing happens, right? There's not. Then later in 1970, he gives a little bit of a lighter look to this, and this is where I really want to hear more of an analysis back, and the question about reformism, and he responded in a way that said, well, you know, as long as it's not in the way, if there was a reform that's not in the way of revolutionary, something that's revolutionary, or it it doesn't, it helps, or if it helps with the revolutionary cause in some way or form. And then he goes, and then I'm thinking like, okay, what is that? You know, like, and I'm trying to think of different ways. I have different things in my mind right now, but I'm gonna give what he goes in to explain. And he was like, in California at the time, they were pushing for decentralization of the police force, and how that could help. So that I was, you know, so I'm trying to find that fine line in which he speaks on when we're talking about you know, reformism being used in a way to help revolution, as well as, you know, what is, you know, what's that line in there that could be beneficial. And something that came to my mind would be like, okay, well, if somehow, you know, if you're like, oh, this person's really into electoral politics or whatever, and they're having a function somewhere, and then all right, we'll go. We go there and we pass out a bunch of theory and revolutionary pamphlets. You know what I mean? Like maybe that's what. But I just want to hear more of what someone else might think, that it could be
Let me jump in.
applicable.
I'm gonna jump in on that, Comrade Rob. That's a interesting question, and we dealt with that question in the prison system, where we had a newspaper that was circulating called Burning Spear out of Chicago, and it was primarily out of the Republican New Africa camp. But they had some good theory though, so we studied their stuff. And one of the arguments they made, and they used Kwame Nkrumah and Amilcar Cabral to buttress their analysis. They said that there's no such thing as reform when a revolutionary takes on the contradictions of the current enemy state. If the masses of the people are suffering from the housing, that's not and it's led by the revolutionaries. That's not a reform. That's an advance in the stage of the revolutionary struggle. A reform is when the politicians come to a particular area and say, because the people are upset, we're going to give you more housing. We're going to give you, we're going to bring some good jobs into this area. And it soothes and calm the anger of the masses. And the enemy go right back to being the enemy again. That's reformism. So when the masses stand up and say, end the pig brutality in our community, they're not calling for a reform of the enemy system by itself. They're saying that this is a necessary evil that we must fight in order to survive and to take down this Babylonian society. So you go from one stage of the struggle to another. You know, Mao called it a new democratic revolution, 2 stages of socialism. The first stage is where everybody get together, there's coalitions, the people are in the street, they're fighting against the state, all that kind of stuff. Then you have the second stage where they go over into communism. But you get my point though. When we fight for better housing, we're not fighting for reform because we're revolutionaries. Our ideology extends to the overthrow of the enemy state, and our practice reflects that. Whereas you get a non-revolutionary who is fighting against bad housing, his ideology only extends to the erection of the new house. And then he go back to his job again or her job again. That's the difference in how I see it. Maybe other comrades see it differently, and I apologize for being long-winded, brothers and sisters. All power to the people.
Well, I love the response, so I don't have anything to add.
I think Shaka answered that as best as any of us could here. Alan?
Yes, all power to the people. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, and a perfect example of that, of the giving of jobs, is like here in Houston in Fifth Ward, they plan on doing a project that's going to have green energy, you know, and people are gonna, get jobs, and they're gonna train them and stuff like that, just for, I guess, the next mayor or the next people, to like find some other way to just, continue to do the things they do and not actually take care of the problems that's in, not Fifth Ward, I'm sorry, Sunnyside is a low income area here in Houston, and that's a great example of that. But to the thing about fascism is, like, basically growing up in Mississippi. Mississippi is a literal fascist state. They are the reason why Roe v. Wade is like got tossed out, because for some strange reason, well, not some strange reason, we know why. Because growing up there, and then also have grown up in Georgia, different parts of the country, and going to different parts of the world, you vastly, like, it didn't take me long to see, something's not right. And everybody back home is just docile in comparison of like, the movement. And I try to ask questions about, well, why didn't you guys do anything? And it was the reason being that because, living, I guess, in a system like that for so long, you become complacent to it. And even if you do, just like Cornel West said, if you put black faces in high places, they then become complacent to the system just to keep themselves afloat. And now people are starting to see, well, especially back home in Mississippi, the teachers aren't being paid. Now they're starting to say, well, hey, this isn't right, because now they're seeing the great recession and all this that's been going on. And it's like, and I've been trying to like feed them stuff like, yeah, y'all should unionize, or yeah, y'all should, take steps. Because I know it's gonna take steps. It's not gonna be like, just like you said, Chairman Jake, it won't be this fantastical, we all go on the streets one day and the revolution, and then that's gonna be it. Like, no, it's gonna take steps to get there, and more or less, how do we get to those steps? But I figure just small baby, not necessarily small baby incremental, but decent enough incremental steps to get people to stop being so docile, to like jolt them into actually doing direct actions to help themselves, to try to be better, to pull themselves out of, the situation that they're in, to stop being so docile. And especially in the Mississippi Delta, like one of the poorest parts of our nation, damn near a global South country conditions, like they have terrible water. And the mayor back in Leland just like, he lies about stuff like that. And I'm like, y'all still elect this person because y'all don't want to shake up the foundations, because y'all so afraid that the white supremacists are gonna come in and like just do something. But you have to stand up and fight. You have to take that risk. You have to, be the example for your kids and grandkids to, live and carry on and actually see a better Mississippi in a sense. And just the neo-Confederacy itself, even here in Texas, is like, Houston is a bubble compared to the rest of the state. So, but yeah, I'm rambling, so I'm gonna stop.
Well, so I thought of a good way to answer Rob's question as well. Just in the course of what you were saying, Alan, and I'll try to approach it as as dialectically as I can here. So for example, with healthcare, when normally, right, the calls that go out are, okay, we need Medicare for all, or we need universal healthcare, or whatever it is, right? And it's a reformist call because they're trying to change that within the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, or whatever it is. People are trying to mobilize, reactionary forces to change whatever that structure is toward making it, say, a free healthcare system or what have you. When we come into the picture and we begin to say organize nurses and doctors to go on strike, when we build free healthcare clinics, and yes, when we mobilize people from our own ranks to go into that establishment to antagonize it, then it takes on the character of its opposite. So it's no longer reformist anymore. Now it's revolutionary. It transforms into something new. So I think that's probably one way to answer your question. I could be wrong though. But we do have a hand up here. So Sister Robinson.
Yeah, I just wanted to call attention to the situation that, let's see, since COVID-19, the pandemic disrupted the school kids' lunch program from kindergarten to 12th graders. It's like 30, 40 million students who get free lunch. And for some reason, it was conveniently left out of the new federal spending package, okay, of about $1.5 trillion by Biden. So I was just kind of bringing that up as some type of fascism, and they're talking about ending other free food programs as we speak. So it's really good that we have these community gardens going. And just wanted to also talk about the healthcare system, because right now I am definitely suffering with that because I can't find a primary sports care medicine doctor for an injury that I have. And the medical system right now is so bad, it's like I have to find my own specialist. The doctor has reached out to find a specialist and so on and so forth, and no one is really helping me. It's like, okay, well, we need you to do 6 weeks of physical therapy for injury that no one did an MRI on to see what the injury is. But the government wants to make that money off of me. You see what I'm saying? So I could be doing 6 weeks of physical therapy for no reason and making the injury worse because they don't know what it is. So I would look at all of that as other reasons of other ways of fascism, if you will.
So yeah, just to tie, this talk about healthcare and reformism into fascism a little further, when George Jackson talks about scientific capitalism, he's talking about the concerted efforts to one, change that new thing that we've so like with reformism, right? When we change the policy that we want into a revolutionary thing where we directly try to enact that policy, or with in mind the our potential in doing so to actually overthrow the economic base in society, which is capitalism. That's the thing that makes it revolutionary itself. When we try to do those things, they're trying to revert that back into a reformist thing, right? They're trying to get people into the ranks to dull the revolutionary potential of, say, getting healthcare workers to go on strike, or hey, let's try to start a for-profit people's clinic or whatever it is. And then there's the other side of it too, the concerted effort, the concentration of forces to actually repress movements like that, whether that's putting their agents into those parties, into those programs, whether that's sending the cops in to go and pour bleach on everything, whether it's directly sending a SWAT team to a building to bomb it and burn it down. And the concentration of imperial capitalists and the politicians who are basically handled by those imperial capitalists, and the repressive organs of the state, like prisons and police officers and these kinds of people, when all those forces come together in a concerted effort in mind to repress movements like that, that is what we're talking about when we say scientific capitalism, right? That's what we're talking about when we say fascism. It's the concentration of different organs of the state to reinforce the economic base of society, which is capitalism.
We'll go ahead and do we have any more hands up, or I'm gonna go ahead and resume the study? All power to the people. I want to appreciate and thank the comrades for chiming in. On the other side of the equation, we have Huey Newton's concept of Black communes or intercommunalism, set well within the huge population centers of the enemy state. This concept accepts any level of violence that will be necessary to enforce the demands of the people and workers. These communes will be tied to one another by a national and international vanguard party and joint with the world's other revolutionary societies. Wow, that is deep. Think about that. I can envision, think about that. That is some deep stuff right there. The same way that capitalism have all these octopuses around the world. Have this octopus extending its tentacles around the world, 800 military bases around the world. It has, I think, 1,800 people control 99% of the world's resources, the billionaires, 1,000 billionaires. I mean, this requires a lot of hard work, and I just love it. You got to be able to see it, to feel it. I'm going to read it one more time. We have Huey Newton's concept of Black communes or intercommunalism set well within the huge population centers of the enemy state. This concept accepts any level of violence that will be necessary to enforce the demands of the people and workers. These communities or communes will be tied to one another by a national and international vanguard party or revolutionary organization and joined with the world's other oppressed revolutionary societies. They are the obvious answer to all the theoretical and practical questions and problems about an American revolution, a revolution that would be carried out principally by Blacks. Well, that's powerful there. Every time I read that, it helps clarify a lot for me. And I hope it clarifies a lot for you comrades as well. The question I have asked myself over the years runs this way. Who has done most of the dying, most of the work, most of the time in prison, on Max Row? Who is the hindmost in every aspect of social, political, and economic life? Who has the least short-term interest or no interest at all in the survival of the present state? In this condition, how could we believe in the possibility of a new generation of enlightened fascists who would dismantle the basis of their hierarchy, their control, their rule, their leadership? Just how many Americans are willing to accept the physical destruction of some part of their country, some part of their so-called fatherland, so that the rest of the land and the world might survive in good health? How can the Black industrial worker be induced to carry out a valid workers' revolutionary policy? What and who will guide him? The commune, intercommunalism, the central citywide revolutionary culture, the dancing, the celebrations, the demonstrations, the honoring of each other, our freedom fighters who have failed in the struggle. That's revolutionary culture. That's what George is talking about. Not this Juneteenth corporate thing or Kwanzaa. That's not revolutionary culture. But who will build the commune that will guide the people into a significant challenge to property rights? Carving out a commune in the central city will involve claiming certain rights as our own, out front. Think about what Chairman and the White Panther Party just did. They said they simply took a vacant area and turned it into a people's garden. They didn't ask the enemy state for that. They claimed it right out front, right out front. They didn't go down City Hall and beg, here's my petition, boss. Can I get a vacant lot? They took it right out front. This is what George is saying right here. Look, I'm gonna read it one more time. What and who will guide the people? The commune, the central citywide revolutionary culture. But who will build the commune or intercommunalism that will guide the people into a significant challenge to property rights? Carving out intercommunalism in the cities, in the barrios, in the favelas will involve claiming certain rights as our own out front. Rights that have not been respected to now. Property rights. It will involve building a political, social, and economic infrastructure capable of filling the vacuum that has been left by the establishment ruling class and pushing the occupying forces of the enemy culture from our midst. Who had the temerity, the grit, the tenacity to grab the capitalist bull by the horn and hold on until we break his neck? This is the question George is asking here. Who will build the revolutionary organization? Who had the courage to go amongst our blind, deaf, and dumb brothers and sisters? Our mentally challenged brothers and sisters? Our street organization brothers and sisters? Who will go amongst them and build intercommunalism? It will involve building a political, social, and economic infrastructure capable of filling the vacuum that has been left by the enemy establishment ruling class and pushing the occupying forces of the enemy culture from our midst. The implementation of this new social, political, and economic program will feed and comfort all the people on at least a subsistence level and force the owners of the enemy bourgeois culture either to tie their whole fortunes, all their money, all their banks, all their wealth to the people's struggle, to the communes and the people, or to leave the land, the tools, and the market behind. And we should answer, George, back by saying we will build the intercommunalism in our cities, in our rural areas. And we would tie them together into an unbreakable chain of resistance, an unbreakable chain of camaraderie, of Panther love. We will build that. We have the courage and the audacity because we're revolutionaries and we stand in the footprints of Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, Asada. We stand in the footprints of good, decent revolutionaries who gave it their all, some known and some unknown. We will build it. The implementation of this new social, political, and economic program will feed and comfort all the people on at least a subsistence level and force the owners of the enemy bourgeois culture either to tie their whole fortunes to the commune and the people or to leave the land, the tools, and the market behind. If he will not leave voluntarily, we will expel him. We will use the shotgun and the anti-tank rocket launcher. Who will build on an ideal that begins with force? The Revolutionary Party, the Revolutionary Organization is now nationwide. He was talking about the Black Panther Party at the time. But vanguard parties cannot build revolutions alone. nor can a vanguard party expect full party line agreement before it moves in the direction of the people. Revolution is illegal. It is against the law. It's prohibited. It would not be allowed. It is clear that the revolutionary is a lawless person. The outlaw and the lumpen will make the revolution. The people, the workers will adopt it. This must be the order. This must be the new order of things. After the fact of modern industrial fascist state. And brothers and sisters and comrades, I want to read this passage one more time. It's very important because George, you lay out some principles here when especially comrades are just coming into the movement. This is a good passage to read and study. In fact, at one point, I used to wake up in the morning and I knew this whole passage. I used to say it to myself because it just reaffirmed where I stood at in this revolutionary struggle. Who will build on an ideal that begins with force? The vanguard party is now nationwide, but vanguard parties cannot build revolutions alone, nor can a vanguard party expect full party line agreement before it moves in the direction of the people. Revolution is illegal. It is against the law. It's prohibited. It would not be allowed. It is clear that the revolutionary is a lawless person. The outlaw and the lumpen will make the revolution. The people, the workers, will adopt it. This must be the new order of things after the fact of the modern industrial fascist state. Now, I'm going to say I have issue with a part of George's analysis here. I think the outlaw and the lumpen will play a significant role in the revolution, but they will not lead it. It have to be the workers, whether the workers are in the form of a revolutionary organization adopting a proletarian outlook, or they are they are revolutionaries in armed struggle around the world, guarding their people against the enemy state over there. But revolution can only be led by those who are politically developed in the science of dialectical historical materialism, developed in the science of revolutionary organization and structure. It can't be led by those who are illiterate and those who exist outside of the enemy economy, such as the outlaw. Without an infusion of political consciousness, they end up being bandits, warlords, robbing and stealing from the people. So while we agree revolution is illegal, it's against the law, it's prohibited, it will not be allowed. It is clear the revolutionary is a lawless person. The outlaw and the lumpen will make the revolution in solidarity and unity with the people, the workers. Not that the workers will adopt it or the people will adopt it. You can't have a revolution without the people. The people is the revolution. The people can't adopt the revolution after the fact. In order to go over to antagonism with the enemy state, the people have to be firmly behind that. And it would take millions of people to be convinced that this enemy system now needs to be on the trash heap of history. So that's just my little disagreement right there. Other comrades may have a different perspective, but I believe that revolutionary organization, revolutionary leaders must be the tip of the spear in the struggle to destroy and dismantle the enemy state and build in its place the new socialist state. I believe that. Revolutionaries must do that. And outlaws, street organizations must adopt what we're doing. We don't adopt what they're doing. We're the people. We're part of the people. There's no division between the revolutionary organization and the people. That's why I have a disagreement with this here, brothers and sisters. In Blacks, the authoritarian traits are mainly the effects of terrorism and lack of intellectual stimulation. The communal experience will redeem them. At present, the Black worker is simply choosing the less dangerous and complicated strategy of survival. All classes and all people are subject to the authoritarian syndrome. It is an atavistic throwback to the herd instinct, but it requires only the proper trauma, the proper eco-sociological set of circumstantial pressures to bring forth a revolutionary consciousness. I know that's a lot of big words. All he's saying, it requires a little bit of reading up on revolutionary ideas, and your brain will begin to see things differently. Racism enters on the psychosocial level in the form of a morbid traditional fear of both Blacks and revolutions. I don't have to talk about that there. You know the history of how these folks over here are scared of revolution, real revolution, even fake revolutions around the world. The resentment of Blacks and conscious or unconscious tendencies to mete out pain to Blacks throughout the history of America's slave systems all came into focus when Blacks began to move from south to north and from countryside to city to compete with whites in an industrial sector and in general engage in status competition. Out of that came resentment, fear, insecurity, and the usual isolation that is patterned into every modern capitalist industrial society. The more complex the products, the greater the division of labor, the higher the pyramid, the broader its base, and the smaller the individual brick tends to fill. Are multiplied by 10 when racism, race antagonism is also a factor. Think about that. Mexicans are taking our jobs. So when the factory shut down in the South and go to Asia or to the Caribbeans and open up over there, they don't have to worry about labor laws. They don't have to worry about meeting wage standards. They don't have to worry about health care given to their workers. And over here, rather than the brother and sister in that rural area looking at the factory as being responsible for their misery, they'll say the Mexicans are taking our jobs. That's the resentment George talking about, the fear, the insecurity that's built into capitalism. It's built into it. They want my job. How many court cases we've seen over the last 20 years around affirmative action? I can't get in school because the Black took my job. That's racism. That's what George is talking about. The enemy uses that to divide us. And it works, and it continues to work. There's certainly, brothers and sisters, no lack of evidence to prove the existence of an old built-in character assassination of programmed racism. What class controls the nation's educational facilities? Prints, the newspapers and magazines that carry the little cartoons and omits or misrepresents us to death. Who owns that stuff? The newspapers, the TV stations. What class? And they tell the rest of the country and the world how they should look at us. These things has always served to distract and diffuse feelings of status deprivation, suffered by the huge sectors just above the black one. Just above the black sector are those labor aristocracies, those white workers. They all are part of the working class, but there are sectors within that class that benefits from the exploitation of the third world countries. And George is talking about primarily the whites. They're a bribed class. They're bribed by so much of the wealth coming into this country from around the world, and they're able to get a nice house and a picket fence, a nice dog, and they built a gated community. They got technological stuff everywhere. Stores within that community, hospital within that gated community. They never have to venture outside of that fortress. And these people owns everything, controls everything. And they put us up against one another to fight for the meager resources. That's what George is saying. It's a distraction. Then also, to account for the seemingly dual nature recognizable in the authoritarian personality, conformity, but also a strange latent destructiveness. Racism has always been employed as a pressure release for the psychopathic destructiveness events by people historically processed to feel the need for a decision maker, to hate freedom. We need a strong man. Re-elect Donald Trump. A strong man. This is what George's saying. Racism and conformity feeds that. People don't think for themselves. The enemy tells them what to think through their little newspapers and their TV and these bootlickers. The black misleadership class, the white misleadership class, the brown misleadership class, the Asian misleadership class, are all working as arms of the enemy state. All of them serve, like George said, to weaken our movement. But it gives an outlet, a pressure release for those who are psychotic, who have a destructive desire to protect white people. And they're moved by fear. They talk about genetic annihilation. They talk about some kind of white replacement theory. I'm not too fully adept of that theory because I haven't read it in depth, but outright it's foolish, stupid. On the face of it, it should be rejected. But people listen to that stuff, read that stuff. They kill for that stuff. Racism gives an outlet to people who don't want to attack the system because that's my white brother in power. That's what they say. Donald Trump is my white brother. But that Negro right down the street, or that Indian right down the street, who are in the same economic condition I am, is my enemy. I go and shoot up the church. Or shoot down a store, killing elderly people. Or little babies in a parade, having fun, enjoying their summer, shot down because of destructive psychopathic personality that racism builds in this society and people. All of these killings are motivated by desire to hate the other, not to hate capitalism. They don't like the Democratic Party, and they call the Democratic Party out. But they don't hate capitalism, imperialism. That's why you've seen the FBI for decades not classify the KKK and the neo-Nazis as extremist groups. They just did that stuff, brothers and sisters, in the last 5 years. Before that, these groups were arms, deputized arms of the state. Who you think shot down those brothers and sisters in 1980 in Greensboro, North Carolina? Those workers, when they was protesting and fighting for their dignity with the people. It was the Ku Klux Klan, the neo-Nazis, working with the pigs. This is just facts. I ain't talking hyperbole, it's just facts. The police and the Ku Klux Klan are the same, whether they wear a suit or that little dingy white sheet. And the oppressor in power know how to use that to divide us, to weaken us. The revolutionary is outlawed. The Black revolutionary is a doomed man. All the forces of counter-revolution stack up over his head. He's standing in the tank trap he has dug. He lives in the crosshairs. No one can understand the feeling but himself. From the beginning of his revolutionary consciousness, he must use every device to stay alive. Violence is a force issue. It's incumbent on him. The very first political programs have had to be defended with duels to the death. The children's breakfast programs haven't been spared. The next round of intercommunal building could cause the third great war of the century. I'm gonna read that one more time. I just think it's so apropos to what with the times we're living in right now. All of the forces of reaction, counter-revolution, stack up over the head of the revolutionary. He's standing in the tank trap he has dug. He lives in the crosshairs. No one can understand feelings but himself. From the beginning of his revolutionary consciousness, he must use every device to stay alive. Violence is a force issue. It's incumbent on him. The very first political programs that we build will have to be defended to the death because the enemy won't allow it. The children's breakfast programs haven't been spared. The next round of commune building could cause the third great war of the century. Brothers and sisters, comrades, we must build with the fingers of one hand wrapped around a gun, an anti-personnel weapon. We cannot leave the central city. This must be understood by the other revolutionary people if we are to move together to conclusive action. The war will be fought in the nerve centers of the nation. The cities where Angela Davis was finally captured as she was at work for the revolution, where Huey Newton was found hiding and working by the government's propaganda apparatus. We cannot withdraw from the city. We can't. There will be no massive flight back to Africa on the part of Blacks. There won't be a massive repatriation of whites back to the South. The cities are here, and they are here until we restructure them after the destruction of the enemy state. And we have to fight under the ground where we at right now. We can't come up with a policy that say, wait until we get to Africa and we're going to start the revolution, but we're going to agitate here on the grounds. What kind of revolutionary struggle is that? Where you don't want to attack the enemy here, but you want to attack the enemy in a safe space in Africa. What kind of revolutionary are you?
I think Shaka was dropped from the call.
Oh,
He'll be back here in a second.
All power to the people. I don't know what happened, brothers and sisters. I apologize for that. Maybe that was the end. I don't know. But in any event, let's go on with our studies. The war will be fought in the nerve centers of the nation. The cities where Angela Davis was finally captured as she was at work for the revolution, where Huey Newton was found hiding and working by the government's propaganda apparatus. Think about that. Huey was hiding. He wasn't hiding and trying to be safe. He was still working. He was doing the people's work. He was hiding from the enemy. That's what we have to do. We have to hide from the enemy what is precious and expose that which would not hurt us. That's what we have to do. And we can't withdraw from these cities. There will be no Black nation after the revolution, a white nation after the revolution, an indigenous nation after the revolution. What's the purpose? If after the revolution here in America, we go back into our own individual silos, our own tribalistic barriers, and we open ourselves up for the re-emergence of the reactionary class to exploit the uneconomic even development of these new states. Not all of them will grow economically the same. Not all of them would have advanced literacy the same. Not all of them will have advanced healthcare the same, because we're recreating a model of capitalism, but we're calling it a Black nation. We're calling it a white nation. We're calling it Turtle Island. But it still has the entrails of capitalism. So what are we building? If after the revolution, we go back into our own separate enclaves. This is what George is saying here. The revolution will bring in the new man, the new woman. The revolution, brothers and sisters, will usher in new values, new morals, new ways of relating outside of the incentivized money thing, outside of property relations. The new revolution will establish a new humanity built on from each according to their ability. That's what we're trying to do in the new socialist world. I'm not trying to fight and then have to fight again against other states around me who feel cheated in terms of the means of production, because capitalism develops unequally. That's just a law. Come on, brothers and sisters. You know, when we start hearing this nonsense, we got to really ask ourselves, what is going on here? What are we fighting for then? If all we want is a Black nation, situated aside a white nation that is terroristic, that is racist in its core, that is constantly attacking the Black nation, standing alone like Haiti was. And Fred Hampton give you that example. Give you that example. How are you gonna have a Black nation in a sea of white supremacy? They'll suffocate us to death. They control international financial institutions. Their militaries are bigger than ours. We just have to be a bit more logical when it comes to understanding the nature of the beast. And I apologize for raising my voice, brothers and sisters. In order to complete the revolutionary syllogism, the fascists must be forced to withdraw. And under cover of the guns which force their withdrawal, we will build the new Black communes, a blade in the throat of fascism. So I'm going to leave it here, my brothers and sisters, and open it up to questions and ideas, or if you want to make a statement, chime in. I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Jake so he can go ahead and start that process. All power to the people.
All right, so we're going to go Veronica and then Alan. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. Thank you. excuse me, sometimes I get nervous. But I wanted to just add, piggyback on what Shaka said. We've been fed for decades this anti-communist nonsense. And really, if the benefits that we some of them that we still have, if it wasn't for the communist political party and the socialists, we wouldn't have a 40-hour work week. We wouldn't have unemployment. We wouldn't have Social Security or, even welfare. Because of those political parties, Roosevelt knew that if he didn't really do some major reforms, all hell was going to break loose. Now, once Roosevelt, dies and Truman is in office, all of those programs will slowly roll back. And this is where we are today, where, unemployment, federal, the federal minimum wage is under $8. We don't have a livable wage. Now, most of the good jobs or whatever were eventually outsourced. We're basically a service nation where we don't produce a damn thing. So I think it's really important that we realize that when they say, communism, anti-communism, it's anti-democratic. It's anti, really human, point blank. Anyway, I guess that's my 2 cents. And also one other thing too, I live in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I happen to have met the widow of one of the doctors that was killed in 1979. And anytime that we're successful in integration movement, and the enemy is going to go after us. Like when the KKK shot those organizers, it was one of the FBI agents, an infiltrator, that actually encouraged the KKK to go to the scene and shoot them, period. So lots of times, it's not necessarily, sometimes the people that are really encouraging it and actually committing these, acts are actually FBI or police agents, point blank. So that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Alan, you have the floor. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. To Chairman Shaka, when you was bringing up the white ethno state is known as the 14 words. Tucker Carlson has said it over and over and over again. 14 words, I don't know it by heart, but I know it just pretty much means for them to have a pure white ethno state in order to save, white babies or whatever. And that is one of the things you have brought up. And if you want to read, it's not really anything new. It's the old concept, maybe back in the 1800s to a degree, but it's not like something super new or anything like that. But also, you also brought up the black people say the same. Black people repeat the same things as well. They parrot that same sentiment by trying to have a pure black ethno state, which is essentially the same thing, just changing one face of capitalism to another face being black. And we know proponents of these are like the Umar Johnsons and Kevin Samuels and Thomas Sowells and stuff like that. And those are pretty much they're a hindrance to our movement. And and we have to teach the people just like the sister was saying, you know, people have been taught so much anti-communism, because anti-communism also is anti-intellectualism as well. So we have to actually go in and teach the brothers, especially in the lumpen area. They have to teach them like where you get these ideas of moving in silence or the manosphere BS. Is like that's actually counter-revolutionary, and it won't bring any liberation that you want. Because even if we were to, I guess, like you said, the people want to go to Africa and stuff like that, and then try to attack from there, it makes no sense, because you have to deal with the problems in Africa first, which are, for example, the nation of Nigeria is a fascist state, a black fascist state, because, you know, they pretty much, after colonialism, have just only took up the only other thing they knew was their colonial masters. And that's why they have the problems that they do today. But even here in America, we'll have to, for it to do, we have to go in and educate the people. And we can't always use the words that we know. We have to use in a language, in the layman's language, which isn't bad. It's just a thing that a lot of us, especially, I will admit, on the Marxist-Leninist side, have a problem with. But it's necessary to teach this, and necessary for us to have intercommunalism for everybody to understand, like, hey, a pure ethno-white state or a pure ethno-black state won't make any sense, because y'all will be warring with each other for no reason, and then you'll have nothing. And that's what I wanted to bring up on that.
Rob, you have the floor.
I'll make the comment that pretty much everything, I know I'm older than most of you guys, and everything that I pretty much learned in school was a lie when it came.
Oh, y'all hear me?
Yes.
Rob, you have.
Yeah, we can hear. I think Sister Robinson was speaking and her phone went out or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Comrade Rob.
Oh, okay. I thought Sparkle was going. Yeah, I want to respond to what Veronica was saying and some things that we just read, what we just read about, try to kind of bring it all together. I think that the example of Roosevelt is kind of where the reformism and revolutionary conflict comes into play. Like, I mean, a lot of theoreticians or a lot of scholars or intellectuals might say, like, at that point was like the closest we came to a revolution and the imperial core and all the different material conditions which were aiding and producing that, and how what happened that was FDR and those which George Jackson was talking about with these elites making deals with the proletariat and partnerships. And eventually what they did was they sold out the socialists and the revolutionaries. And that's what made it reformism. That's where it came to a point where, this movement that was on the rise and that was ready to seize power, FDR found those who were weak and sold out, and those people sold out the movement. And you see what happened with the labor power and the labor movements after that, how they started to go downhill, and how we lost that political power, which brings into the next thing I wanted to bring up with these different stratuses of the proletariat, from the lumpen to the labor aristocracy, and that's kind of the ones who sold out the rest of the workers. Those are the ones who made the deals. Those are the ones who benefit off of imperialism. Those are the ones who are benefited off of white supremacy and these things. And that's why we have to knock down those gates that separate the working class. And there's a lot of different elements in which all these different stratuses that play a role in. I know it's a lot of people say the lumpen is politically illiterate, so to speak, but so is a lot of the rest of the proletariat. So I don't think that's the dividing factor right there. We all, the masses, need to be revolutionary literate, and we have to be able to educate the masses on all levels. And we have to really understand the different aspects of these different strategies, what political power each have. If we're talking about the petty bourgeois and the small business owners and what political power they have, what leverage they could use in a revolutionary act, to the labor aristocracy and the proletariat in general, having labor power as leverage. Then we get into the next question of the lumpen proletariat, and that's why it's important that the lumpen proletariat understands why what political leverage they have. And the question comes into play of what Mao says, political power comes out the barrel of the so-and-so. And then that's why all these different strategies have to work together, because each one has a potential political power component that they each possess. And our job is to bring them all together. And that's all I wanted to say about that. But just one more thing about the lumpen. I think a lot of people need to study into the lumpen and how the elements of the lumpen changed over time, material conditions from Marx's times to our times now. All power.
All power. Veronica?
To, add something concerning one of the big blows to the labor movement was the Taft-Hartley Act. And, the Chris Smalls, who was successful with, hopefully being able to start a union with the Amazon workers. One of the reasons why he was successful as opposed to, the Alabama location was that he started an independent, labor movement. The other one in Alabama is part of an established labor movement. And, like everyone has mentioned, these traditional labor movements have been infiltrated, and they're very weak. They've basically, the leadership decided, to work with the enemy, with the capitalists, bottom line, and another thing too, these social issues like abortion and transgender, the state, the government, they use these social issues to keep us divided. I used to be, part of the Green Party. And, if I post something that's considered like anti-vax, it was the damn Green Party, that would come down on me. They wanted to censor me. Now, just because I post something that's, questioning vaccination doesn't mean that I'm a so-called anti-vaxxer. I don't have to, too often too, with some political organizations, they basically want to control and tell us what to do and what to say. But, when we can, get past all of the, these, some of these social issues are now not, of course, not abortion, but some of these social issues are really dividing us, and all, they're there just to keep us divided, the bottom line. So, that's it.
All power. So do we have any other comments, analysis, anything like that? Well, Shaka, I think you can end it here.
Thank you for that. And I want to appreciate all the comrades for chiming in. Next week, we have our studies will resume on Wednesday at the same time. But let us go out this week and do something meaningful to advance the revolution. So when we meet next week, we can say this is what we did this week to build people's power. And on that note, be safe, be vigilant, and all power to the people.
All power to the people.
Yes, all
All power.
power to the people.
All power.